people to be productive, not the old type. I'm not talking of just investing in increasing output. We're now looking at a different type of agricultural investment, adding value to the chain. So how do we process the goods how do we market them, the goods that are produced? How do we increase productivity on the continent, which is one-third that in other continents? So that's the answer. This can be part of the equation if it is the proper type of growth.
Yeah,
He had his hand up.
We'll just try and give everyone one.
Yes. One of the questions, because I was about to ask, was partly answered by you, because we have been talking about growth, especially in Nigeria. They said the economy grew by 7%, and of course we have a whole lot of jobless, people out there who are wondering how an economy will be growing without, new investment and job creation. Now, we are a little bit worried about the future of Africa, because 90% of the resources or revenue derived in Africa are from commodities, and prices of these commodities are unstable. Now, take the case of Nigeria, for instance. The excess crude that was set up, that was used as a buffer, has been exhausted. We now have about 400 million in that account. God forbid that prices just come down to $40. What happened? And we're saying that if, like the World Bank is projecting that the growth is going to be increased in the near future, if things like this happen, what are the implications?
I think that you're asking you're asking really good quality questions. On that issue, you have picked on a very important issue, which is the volatility of commodity prices, particularly even the volatility of food prices. When the food crisis struck, that was quite severe for certain countries on the continent, and there were even riots in some countries. So managing that volatility for food security in agriculture is crucial, and it's one of the areas where the World Bank is really focusing. We've increased our investment in agriculture from 400 to 800 million in this past year, and we are managing a fund for the G8 and G20 that is called the Global Agricultural and Food Security Fund, GAFSI. And I can tell you more information on it. It's also designed to encourage long-term production, helping the country solve problems like storage, which can help. If you can give farmers the means of proper storage and processing, then you can manage some of these ups and downs. If you can give countries, and on an international level, if you can avoid export restrictions, you can deal with that. Coming to other commodities, which is, you mentioned oil. As you know, in Nigeria, we had devised a means to avoid this volatility, and you just pointed out that the excess crude account where money was being saved because we put in a fiscal rule, is depleted. Now, a sovereign wealth fund is being created, I understand, that has different categories, including a stabilization part and investment part. We really need, if we are not going to have the excess crude, because they didn't have legislation behind it, it is vitally important that this sovereign wealth fund idea with the various windows is supported, because we need to be able to manage this. Nigeria would not have been able to manage this crisis well had it not been for that excess crude. Remember when it was being created, there was a lot of objection, saying, why do we save this money now? It's a rainy day, let's spend all of it. The rain is already falling. But they didn't know that proper katakata rain was going to come. And it came during this crisis, and they were able to access it and use it. So your question is correct. We must support sticking to the fiscal rule and putting money aside, be it in the sovereign wealth fund, in the stabilization part and the savings part for the future. And African countries that have commodity, all of them, many of them have commodity price issues. They have to look at this type of mechanism. They have to put in a way to delink their budget from the commodity price and save for the time that prices fall down. Okay.
All right, speaking of sticking, we've got to stick to time. So, another question? Yeah.
The questions are quite complex, so I'm taking a long time to answer.
Sure, I'm just thinking about the.
Yeah, I have to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then
my name is Edward Nyako from Ghana Television. Listening to Mr. Zilik and Strauss-Kahn implies that Africa is saying that next year and the year forward they're going to lead the world in terms of out of the recession. But one clear issue that has come up is that China has come up with the economic model in terms of developing infrastructure, investing for commodities. There's a study done that shows that in DR Congo, they did that and they're spending $6 billion in terms of infrastructure and taking away commodities worth $60 billion. Now, Ghana, China is now promising Ghana and Japan as well about $16 billion. Now, what is the World Bank doing to be able to solve this problem? Because what they are doing is that China is doing is that there isn't any other competitor in the donor communities or Western countries that is doing the same thing. So African countries prefer to go to China for this kind of financing because there seems to be no conditionality or any strings attached to that. What is the World Bank doing? Because eventually, if you look at it critically, it's going to put Africa in the same situation we find ourselves in. Because the same direction that we are going, but with a different, clothing.
I think we got the question.
Thank you.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to make two statements. One is that when these discussions take place between China and African countries, this is between two sovereign governments. So, when you say what is the World Bank doing, I think you have two governments negotiating. All we can do is give advice about what are good principles for such negotiations. But I want to say that we should not be afraid of Chinese money. The continent, exactly, the continent needs resources for investment, okay? It does. I think what we should look at is what do we want to see when the Chinese come to invest? So don't people say, oh, Chinese money? It's important that they bring the investment for infrastructure. The continent needs it. However, what we say from the part of the World Bank is we're trying to work with them in partnership along with some of the countries they're investing in. And all we're saying is, look, any investment should be done in a transparent and open manner, with all the costs calculated of what the investment is bringing to the country and what the Chinese are getting, what the country is getting, so that everybody knows. I don't know if the figures you quoted are correct, but if we have all the things on the table, then people will not be asking. The public will know exactly what is the value of this exchange that is being done, commodities for infrastructure. And so we are working with the Chinese to do that. I see a willingness on their part, and we would urge them. But at the end of the day, it is incumbent on governments negotiating to make sure they have all the information and all the expertise on their side to be able to get, good negotiations. We also have that with companies. There are countries that negotiate with not oil companies, timber companies, and so on. If there's not equal information on both sides, then you may not get the kind of good opportunity you want. So governments must arm themselves with people who are knowledgeable and who can negotiate well. And that's what we advise them. Second, it must be transparent. The population has a right to know what has been negotiated, who is benefiting from what.
Yes.
Okay. There was a gentleman.
Excuse me, just a brief one. It has to be, what I'm asking is close to what the Vanguard person had asked, but just one thing missing. You've been in Nigeria and you've been a very strong activist in terms of government policies and all that. Recently, there were controversies over growth issues. Growth issues, economic growth, the GDP growth issue. The government said it's 7.4. Somebody who really was in government for several years came up to say it is not true and warned the government. The government reacted negatively. And how do you look at it? I don't know whether you follow the trend.
No, I didn't follow.
Sure?
I'm very sure. I didn't follow, and I don't enter into that kind of debate. All I can tell you right now is the message to the government: we need to support the finance minister to have a fiscally prudent approach to managing the resources of the country. We need to be, we need to be fiscally prudent. The excess crude account has been depleted. A lot of spending is going on. The budget has to be managed in a tighter fashion, and we have to rein in our fiscal deficit, which, according to what I've been told, is approaching 6% of GDP. We need to bring it back to 3%. So that, and we should support the budget people and the finance minister to do that. That's a very clear message.
All right, we can probably take one.
Thank you.
One, maybe two more, if they're just really
Please
quick.
take the lady. No lady
Yes,
has been.
no.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, mine is probably tied to, everyone in Nigeria and outside knows you for your actions, when we were going to exit the Paris club, And so, but of recent, the NBS, no, sorry, the DMO, the Debt Management Office, said Nigeria was still paying back the debts of the 1960s. And
This debt issue, the media, you have to play a role to report things accurately, because there's some misunderstanding going on. There is no problem with external debt for Nigeria. The external debt of Nigeria is low enough, and you can get the exact numbers from DMO, so let them be the ones supplying you. The problem we have is with domestic debt. We have accumulated, I think it's up to, I don't want to quote the figure, but I believe it's up to 26 or so billion dollars equivalent in domestic debt. That is debt that we are taking within the country. That's what we need to focus on. Anytime they talk about debt, people start shouting about external debt. The external debt is very low. And you go and get the numbers. Nigeria has to pay attention to domestic debt. And stop accumulating that, because they think that because it's domestic, it cannot come to harm them, the economy. That is not true. If you accumulate a lot of domestic, first of all, that's crowding out the private sector when the public sector enters in all the time. I think the level we are at now, if we can sort of level off there, that's okay. But we shouldn't accumulate any more domestic debt, because it's going to lead to some of the very same ills we came out of. It's not only external debt that leads to choking off economic growth and choking off the private sector.
No, people were just confused because we said we had exited. That we had exited the debt trap.
We have exited we were owing. We were owing $30 billion to the Paris Club. We were owing at that time, okay, because you have to get new numbers. That has been taken care of, okay? So we have exited. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So those who are saying that external debt is a problem, it's not the case. Internal debt is a problem.
Okay, we can do one more question.
Yes.
My question is on monitoring of World Bank assisted projects in Nigeria and outside, especially in Africa. I just said that this year alone, almost $1.2 billion were granted, were provided as grants. But how effective are you able to monitor most of the projects that you also finance in Africa? Because at times when you look around, you see some projects, say World Bank assisted projects, and
All right.
within a short period, you don't really see the effects.
Well, I beg to disagree with you, not seeing the effect. I think you should go and look at the areas where, the World Bank projects are happening. We have, first of all, quite a strong country office on the ground in Nigeria. We've got the country director who leads all our work on Nigeria. His name is Honoru. I'm sure most of you have talked to him. He has a strong staff so that they are going out every few months to go and see what is happening on the ground and to make sure the resources are being used. They are being joined by staff from here to do what we call periodic supervision, minimum every 6 months, but sometimes more than that by those who are on the ground. So we do monitor the money and we do start with results. We expect the investments we put in to have results. And like I said, IDA has done very well. I think this is the story. Africans have to acknowledge, that the resources have gotten results all over the world, not just in Africa. So similarly in Nigeria, I think if you look at the things we're doing, I'm not saying everything is perfect. You cannot say that. There's nowhere where everything is perfect. But most of the money we put in, in the last few years, they've been very productive. So that's all I can tell you. So I don't agree with you. Don't see whatever. That's not true.
Some of the projects.